Hi guys. All right, so welcome to Battalion Barbell's YouTube channel. I'm JJ, and today we're going to walk through the 93 kilo junior Asian session where I was handling one of the Battalion Barbell athletes for Team Singapore, as well as also just supporting a fellow Battalion Barbell coach. Without further ado, let's kind of jump into it. The lifter I'm handling here, who eventually became kind of, he eventually became Asian champ, in come the end of the session. The interesting thing here was that initially we had thought that based on nominations, we were going to be kind of shooting for maybe a top three spot, and possibly if things kind of opened up, we could go for the gold. But come the time of the technical meeting, we found out that a lot of the Middle Eastern countries were kind of not participating, and as a result, that meant that we actually got you know nominated as kind of top three, I believe. And from there, that would kind of like allow us to kind of be in the lead, but also at the same time, because there wasn't a kind of clear nominated champ, that would also mean that any of the top four here in Alldan, Fong from Malaysia, Kam from Singapore, and Volkov from, well, Russia, who's kind of a team neutral athlete here, would be able to kind of go for the top spot, right? So just for the ease of conversation here, from here, I'll refer to Kam or Cheng Yu as Big Dog, as he is known in Singapore. So this is kind of like the first time that we this is not the first time we've gone up against each other, or rather, Alden has gone up against Cheng Yu. And also, he's also Cheng Yu in this case, or Big Dog in this case, is handled by the junior head coach Alif, who I also know is really capable on the game day. He knows the rules, he knows how to play it. So, based off of that, we kind of had a sense that he's going to be handled really well. He's going to be his training looked kind of good. And based off the scouting report I got from Alden's coach, we kind of put Big Dog at around like 260 to 270. And we kind of put his top end bench at about 175, and then we also put his deadlift around 305, right? So that's kind of like we want to be safe, and we want to almost overestimate our opponent a little bit, because that means that we know that, okay, like if we set the expectations a bit high, and we set the number a bit high, so this would put Chengyu at 750, right? That we know that that could be the number to beat. And as that number kind of comes down, it makes it easier and easier to manage, rather than, oh, if you assume that he's gonna have the worst day ever, and then you are also not having a good day, it kind of feels like a bigger mountain to kind of climb. So in terms of your own expectation management as a game day coach, that becomes a lot easier to see that kind of mountain get lower and lower, and if the depending on how the day plays out, right? And it also allows you to then gauge your lifter's ability based off of that. Okay, so first things first, if we look at the overall strategy here, you can see chip, chip, chip. This basically just means that so if, say, for example, if I had to put 92.8 here, right, it changes to match, right? So what that just means is essentially we don't have body weight advantage, right? And this is the funny thing, because I know for a fact that Cheng Yu or Big Dog was cutting, right? Because he's on the team as well. I am not too sure about Fong, but I assume based of his coaches, right? Which I only found out data after that he will be cutting as well. And I did, and for Volkov over here, this is the question mark of whether he cut or not. But regardless of which, The openers are as follows. And the funny thing about Alldan is that Alldan did not have the cut, and in fact he was eating up into the meat, right? So I think he landed in China around 91 kilos, but he just kind of ate up into the meat, and he actually weighed in heaviest of all. So we kind of lost that chip advantage, their body weight advantage there. Lot numbers are as follows. Kind of in the middle. We pull kind of after, if we were not kind of lifting the same number, we'll pull after Chengyu, and then we would pull before Feng if we all loaded the same number. Okay, so openers are as follows. Initially we wanted to put Alden's opener at 260, but Alden made the call based off looking at the competition the previous days and decided that he would rather want to open a bit lighter. And then based off of his last few training sessions, he and his coach and I actually had a conversation about bumping his opener up to 155. And we also had that conversation with Alden, and Alden was like, I am not confident with the bench because it was a different pad that from the one that he was training on. So you rather just open conservative and take jumps as he's feeling on that day. So that's how it kind of played out, and then we kind of put the deadlift opener at 260. So first things first is based off of competing against Big Dog before. We know that this 255 is way below his capabilities, and he's likely going to take a big jump, as you will see later on in the day, and then which kind of puts him around the range to hit his projected top end of, or rather the top end that we scouted him to be able to hit at about 305. All right, so that's how it would kind of play out as well. So after all that said and done, one thing to note is that I didn't actually watch any of Alden's warm-ups, right? Because I was handling an 83 before then, directly before him in the group before him. And honestly, I just told him, hey, like we just gotta make sure we hit our warm-ups to depth, film your last warm-up, let me see it, and then if anything, take it a little bit earlier than you would expect, because even though the competition is slow, one of the things is that if you are kind of like moving weird in your warm-ups, you have that time to change your openers. All right, so this is a play-by-play. Um, so Cheng Yu goes out first because he has the lightest squat opener at 230. So one of the things you can see me at the back over here, behind the TC. Funnily enough, I thought that this was the highest squat of Big Dog, right? So that was 230. That's how it moved. Relatively easy. So had so based off of him going to 270, I would say that he would probably need to take a bigger jump. Twilight feel it. Three lights, which honestly surprised me because from where I was standing, it looked like it was quite borderline over there, right? So that's what his opener looked like. And okay, look fine on video. And then next up was Volkov over here. And typically, I would say, based off what I know of the Russians, they don't typically have much technical issues. Possibly a slight tendency to open a little bit, uh, like close to the top end. So they don't. Some of them they don't really take these kind of big jumps. They open a little bit. I think the spread is a little bit tighter than what so like some of us would take. And especially it's a lot tighter than what, for example, Big Dog would take, right? So based off of that, I think Big Dog jumped to 245. Volkov here to 230, I believe. So sorry, 230 or 240. Let's see what he jumped. Volkov, 240. He jumped 7.5. So like I said, right, the spread isn't too big over there. Three white lights. This is Alden's opener at 255. Yeah, so pretty quick there. He's pretty happy with that. He three white lights. He said he felt good, but it wasn't exactly like the strongest. which I agree with. And because this was Alden's kind of 1 week out squat, right? And this was 270. Yeah, so like based off of that, he looked good enough to open on 270 if you ask me. But just to be conservative, being his first international, we just kind of he just kind of put it down with his coach to 255. Initially it was meant to be 260. But he even put it on 255 and he moved that pretty well, quite happy with it. So now the decision here, we let's look at Fong's squat here. So let me just rewind that. So 275 move pretty easily. So at this point, Cheng Yu went 245, Fong, um, and then I went 272.5. And the reason for going up to 272.5 is simply because based off of uh Chengyu's projected top end, one of the things that I know is that he doesn't have the most advantageous, he doesn't have the best squat compared to all of the rest of the group, all of the rest of the competitors here. And Alden has a relative, this is where Alden will make up the advantages, right? So one of the things that I'm careful to do is that once I've seen that Chengyu has put in that 245, that 15 kilo jump, I want to start making up my ground nice and early on the lift that I have the advantage on, right? So I saw Big Dog jump 15, I jumped 15, and then I kind of slightly chipped, put a bit of a coverage or a chip on top of that. So I went 17 and a half. And based off of what Alden said to me, I literally had this conversation with him and said, hey, like, what's the biggest jump you're confident of making? And based off of that 270, you wouldn't think that he would struggle with 275 here. So I say, okay, like maybe we just gain a little bit of ground here. We cover up with that additional 2.5. Not that it makes too much of an advantage, but if you're confident of making that jump, let's take it. And then based off of that, so I put that 2.5. So Fong over here, based off of this, I believe he loads up 295, and Volkov we've already seen loads of 247.5. Okay, so based off of this, his 230, and the number that he's loaded in, which is 245, I didn't think Big Dog would have 270. So let me just remove that projection, which kind of goes back to the point, right? So you can see that it's now dropped to 725 instead of the initial 750. All right. So this is a strategy that I like to use. Like you project high, and then from there it allows you to be more aggressive and make up advantage when you have it. Okay, so 245, and I would say that knowing Alif, he'll probably jump, who's Big Dog's handler, he'll probably jump to 260 top end. And we kind of go into that second round. We'll see Big Dog's 245. All right, so based off of that, I don't think he's adding another 15 kilos on top of that. Um, and then we look at Volkov's 247.5. Also, a little bit of work, so it wasn't like, but it wasn't crazy hard. And then we look at Alden's 272.5. And based off of this attempt, I kind of knew that kind of top end range, which given by the coach, and based off of this 270 over here, I would say that probably he had 290 on this day, on this training day. But on this day, it just looked like he didn't have really that much more. I'd say 280 tops, right? So based off of that, Jenny jumped to 250. Right. And then Volkov over here, I think jumps to 255 if I have not yep, 255. and he obviously misses that, but so so F5, so miss. And then because Big Dog jumps to 250, I then jump, and I know that Alden probably doesn't have much more. And I probably don't want to risk going up to 280, even though he possibly could have it. One of the reasons I wouldn't do that is because I've already earned that 2.5 from from that first initial jump, right? So instead of going 15, I went 17 and a half. Right, so I gained that 2.5 and I gained a little bit of a space, which means that Alden will have to pull less. And then on top of that, right, so right now, if Alden doesn't feel too good, I can just match whatever Big Dog's jump is, right? So at this point, I opted to go 5 up. And the reason for that is simply because when there's a decision between going 5 or 7.5, right? The logic in my head is that if I took that 7.5 up and I missed it, I would be risking a possible 5 kilos to gain an extra 2.5 kilos, right? So you'll see this point come back around on bench press and the risk being slightly different, which I will explain later on. But at this point, I just match Big Dog's 5 kilos, 5 kilo jump, right? And the next thing that was really interesting is because um our competitor here goes to 295. Um, I remember at this point, based off that 275, I went up to Kelvin, which is the Malaysian coach handling him, and I asked him, "Hey man, do you coach this kid Fong over here, right?" And he said, "Oh no, this is not my lifter. This is a lifter that's coached by so and so." And knowing this kind of a coaching team and their mentality towards game day being quite aggressive and being quite ambitious, I would say. I knew I at this point I kind of quickly took a look at the Asian record, and I knew for a fact that based off the way that Malaysia kind of nominates their lifters, they nominate one of the big things is number one, medal potential, which he already is in, probably the if potential if he hits. He's probably in gold medal here already, hitting this 295 squat,
Let's wait for the light.
which comes out as, I believe, as a good lift, 2 to 1.
A beautiful second attempt.
Good lift, right? And knowing them, they probably came for this number, 310, 310. So if he wanted the Asian record at this point, he would need 310.5. Which at this point, he knew that he didn't have it, but he loaded 305 here, right? Which in my opinion, I wouldn't have done simply because you kind of end up with nothing, right? You don't gain enough kilos on that bar, right, to give you a gap. You're risking a lot of kilos. So if you jump 7.5, you gain 7.5 kilos. But if you jump 10, now you're risking that extra, uh, you're risking that 7.5 to gain it potentially a 2.5. So your risk of hitting that 305 is much lower. So this gives you neither extra kilos if you miss, or rather it leaves you with a big gap if you miss. And then it also kind of doesn't give you the record, doesn't give you a chip. Right, so this was a decision that I probably wouldn't have taken, but and this is nothing against Kelvin because I also realized that I mean speaking to him, he it's not his lifter, and obviously the coaches there has his Fong's coaches has given him a kind of plan, and he's just kind of doing his best within that plan, and they felt like they had 305, and that's what the risk they wanted to take, then by all means, right? So we'll see. Moving on to the third round, Big Dog hits his 250, works for it. And in my opinion,
What a fight.
this probably was the deepest one of the lot. And unfortunately, he missed it on depth, right? Which at this point was kind of a little bit of a relief when I saw it. But I'm of the opinion that kind of got robbed a little bit. He should have not had his opener, but he should have had his third squad. Volkov next. Volkov, I think, hits this pretty good and then kind of misses that on strength. So um unfortunate for him. So that kind of puts him the furthest back of the lot. Alldan comes out. 277 on the zero point 0.5 on the bar. Yeah, pretty good score in my opinion. Unfortunately, does not get it
Unfortunately, no lift.
for depth, which I went to
We
contest
see a center,
and
red from the center and the side.
so apparently when I went to the jury, what happened here was that because Alden looks down, right? They took it as a means that he jumped the squad command. Which to be honest, if you are in IPF Worlds, and if you basically look at the cards, which is what he got actually um two reds, right? Two red cards for depth. And I went to the jury to overturn it for depth, right? They told me that he jumped the squad command, right? Because he put his head down, right? And they took that as him taking a step forward. This is where I think Asians is a bit of a mess because the fault here is clearly for depth, right? But the jury are standing by the decision because he jumped a command, right? But there was none of the refs said are of the opinion that he jumped the command, right? So I could not get the lift overturned, even though I believe that if we look at the lift, I thought I mean it's a little bit blocked. And in that case, the jury, I mean, yeah, if they can't call it, and they would have to physically look at it and say, hey, if they thought that was high, but they weren't even they thought that the depth was okay. Like I asked them, they said the depth was okay, but he jumped the command, and I'm like, he didn't get a red light for the command, so back and forth. They decided that it's going to stand. So he unfortunately did not get his third squad, which would mean, as things stand, Alden doesn't hit, Big Dog doesn't hit, right? And last but not least is Fong on that 305, which he doesn't hit, right? So as things stand, so Fong doesn't hit, Alden doesn't hit. None of the competitors that we care about kind of hit our third squad. Right. So subtotal here 422. Fong is the biggest. We are slightly ahead of Big Dog on subtotal, and then Volkov here is kind of a little bit behind us. And at this point, I kind of started to not look at the Russian anymore because I felt like okay we are kind of we have a safe amount of gap, but I'm not sure how much he can pull. So just to be safe, I just wanted to keep him, keep an eye on him, and make sure I'm not complacent and missing anything that comes up. But based off of subtotals, we are just behind Fong here. Right, so moving on to the bench press. So bench press, because of lot number, we are the first to come out. Uh, Alan comes out, hits the 150 pretty easily. No issues with the pad here. He's pretty happy with that. Commands and everything were pretty good. The only thing that was a little bit annoying for him was the fact that they held everyone quite long before giving a start command. So everyone was kind of subject to those same problems. So 150 was moved pretty good. This is Fong over here, moves 150 really well. To be honest, I didn't really see his opener because I was still deciding what with Alden kind of what number to put in for him next. We
Your karma of
we took that jump into that 160, and here comes Big Dog. So Big Dog comes up 157.5, hits it relatively easy. Looks like he was gonna have a good bench day. So at this point, everyone hits our bench openers here. 150, 150, everyone hits. Goes into so we're not looking at Volkov here already, but Volkov hits as well. Openers. Next up is us again. So we come out first on that 160. Cool. So this is where that conversation around that 160 didn't move the most
very smooth attempt.
sync.
VY lights, good lift.
However, because we have that 2.5 kilo kind of, so at this point we jump to 160. Fong jumps to 160 as well. Again, we come out before him because of our lot number. And then I believe Big Dog jumps to 165, in which case I wouldn't think he would be swinging for 175. So that kind of disappears. That number kind of comes down another 10 kilos from 725. And I believe, let me check the actual score sheet. Volkov jumps to 162.5, right? So, whoops. Okay, so Volkov jumps 162, 162.5. On that second round, and I believe, okay, this is bench, right? This is the second bench. Um, Second bench, we hit fine. Fong comes out. And again, because I was having that discussion with Alden about what number to jump, I didn't really see this attempt, right? And he hits it. But then one of the other coaches who was helping me, or rather like one of Alden's handlers who was just helping with kind of the, the water boy stuff, came up to tell me and it's like, that 160 actually looked pretty okay. It's just that he slowed down a little bit at the top. And I was like, okay, great. One of the reasons why I was happy about that is because I sometimes what happens is a game day coach kind of comes out and looks at the lift. And when they look at the lift, they look at the average speed of the lift, right? So the entire lift, and they judge the entire lift based on the average speed rather than the slowest point of the lift, right? So in which case, he kind of struggled at lockout a little bit right here, and I was praying that he would kind of follow my attempts because I jumped to 165. But instead, Fong opted to take 162.5, which in my opinion is actually a smarter move because he wanted to pick up the kilos here. But the way that I kind of viewed it was that even though Alden's 160, which we can replay slightly, was not the most convincing, uh, I asked him, "What do you think you have?"
A
And
very
like the safe option is definitely 162.5, but I think we can. I'll definitely fight for 165. And at this point, yeah, you have to ask yourself, right? If I go 162, the probability of me hitting and getting at 2.5 is definitely high. But if the lifter is pretty confident that he can hit 165, and this was not, I don't believe this was Alden's kind of ego talking, right? Because he knew what was at stake, and based off of l- seeing how he was handled at nationals and the decisions that he took, I believe that he had the maturity to be like, okay, like I'm just taking kilos that I have, right? And he was like, and I told him, hey, if you feel like you have 165, let's risk 2.5 to gain 2.5, right? So this is a very different scenario from previously where you are risking 5, 7.5, 10 kilos, right? If you try to make like a 12.5 or a 10 or a 7.5 kilo jump, right? You're risking a big number to gain a possibly a bit more advantage here. Whereas in this case, it's an equal number, right? You're risking 2.5 to gain an extra 2.5, right? And and if you do hit it, you gain an extra 5 kilo. So I told Alden, hey, we have a little bit of breathing room from that 2.5 that we gain on your squat here. And everyone else had missed. So let's load that 165 and you go out and you fight for it, and let's see how, like show me that you kind of have it, right? And then moving on to that third, so we didn't see Volkov because we didn't kind of need to. He hits as well. We look at Cheng Yu's second bench, sorry. Whoops. Okay, that was annoying. Let's look at it at the full speed. Okay, I don't know if they, but basically he hits it.
Three white lights,
Not
good
too much,
lift.
not too much of an issue here. Yeah, there we go. A little bit of work, but knowing Cheng Yu, he can probably work through those reps. So we opt to load, Alif opts to load 172.5 for him, and then Volkov, I believe, loads 165. Didn't really have much more on that third. Yeah, correct. So we move on to the third bench. So Fong comes out first, and I was still praying that he misses this, uh, but manages to successfully grind it out. Great call from coach.
Three white lights, good.
Spotted that slowest point at the top rather than the looking at the average lift. And of course, I've got to give props to Kelvin there. It's not his first rodeo. Calls it pretty well. 162.5. Exactly on the dot. And then this is where I was kind of like, oh my God, he hit his 162.5. Alden, we really have to hit, right? And he actually hits it, I would say, a little bit better than his second attempt.
Three white lights, good lift.
So he's happy about that because he knows the kind of bullet that
Just very happy with.
yeah, he knows the bullet that he just dodged over there had he missed it. So Volkov over here next. We see Volkov, very close grip, hits it pretty well as well. And then last but not least, Big Dog for overall bench gold. Again, really easy. So 172.5, 2.5 kilo personal best there. So as things plays out, everyone hits a third bench. And we are still kind of trailing Fong by, well, 22.5 kilos, right? We need a chip on him. So we have that 22.5. We have about 22.5 kilos to make up. We are ahead of Cheng here by 20 kilos. So that deficit has gone from 22 to 20 kilos. So Cheng Yu made up a little bit of ground there. And I know that for in Cheng Yu's case at least, or in Big Dog's case, let this refresh. Okay, cool. So in Big Dog's case, I know this is clearly a little bit of a fake opener, or rather not fake, but like he's just opening really light to gain that momentum, and then also not to kind of fry him out, right? Um so I know that this is that 20 kilo gap that I have here, or that 20 kilo advantage I have here is basically not very big. It's not insurmountable. He can definitely make it up even if he goes 305, right? So if he goes 305, I would need, so based on this sheet, to chip, right? So whoops, 290 trail lead. Okay. So based off of that, I would need to chip Cheng Yu. I'll need 287.5, right? To just make up the deficit up to 77 to 2.5, which I believe for Alden's case, based off his training, I put his top end around 290, so that is definitely catchable. And it puts us with enough gap so that we don't have to do something too crazy. And um yeah, so if Cheng Yu pulls anything more than 305, then we'll be in trouble. Okay, so the sheet is pretty helpful with that. Now moving on to deadlifts, deadlifts. All right, so phone comes out first. And at this point, I don't really know too much about Feng's deadlift training. But obviously, the boys has done their research, and someone again, I think it was one of his handlers, came up to me and was like, "Oh, his heaviest in training was actually 260. His heaviest in comp was like 260, and his heaviest in training was like 260 at like 10, right?" So I was like, okay, if it's 260 at like is his max, 240 is actually a pretty close opener. And again, the boys also told me, oh, we saw his last warm up at 225 and it was or at 220 and it was already like a grinder. So I was like, okay, so that he probably doesn't have very much on the pull, but let's see how he does this. Uh, so I was a little bit more focused on Alden at this point, so didn't really watch too much of his opener here, but the boy said he moved pretty well. And then based off of that, the next one that came out was Chengyu, which I also was watching, so didn't see what number Feng put in, but I'll tell you, Feng put in 260, which at that point I was like, I went back to the boys and I was like, you're either lying to me or that is a really stupid strategy for him to put 260, which is his max that he apparently grinded out. And also like you guys were saying that he grinded out like 220 as a last warm up, right? So I was like, you guys are just bluffing me. I don't believe you until I see it with my own eyes. So I told them the next few attempts, I am going to actually go and watch this guy pull rather than just, take you guys' words for it. But essentially needed to next up after Fong was Chengyu. Big dog pulls it relatively easily. Nothing too
Easy
critical
open.
for as he's as he's going to move his openers if it's 30 kilos beneath his comp best. So at this point he puts 280. Right. And that jump, 25 kilos, puts him right in line to hit that 305, which is what we projected. So 722.5 is the number to beat here. And then next up is us, right? And this is where I'm actually a little bit worried for Alden because he doesn't have the best deadlift, and Alden has had in the past has had like hamstring injuries, which has really hampered his deadlift. He goes up, pulls that 260 here, really easy. Actually, there's a little bit of a fight at the bottom. So again,
Do I like
looking at the whole lift looking at the slowest point of the lift rather than just the average speed of the lift, right? So he gets to that knee and then he blasts through really, really easily, which again you have to look at this at the stickiest point. So based off of that, I'm also looking at Volkov and to make sure that he doesn't try anything funny at this point, right? So let me just close off this chat. And again, slow off the floor and then kind of snaps up to lock up, kind of like how Alden pulls. So at this point, we couldn't really tell who's kind of a deadlift. Everyone hits their opener pretty easily. Nothing too crazy there. And at this point, everyone has hit their opener, so everyone's kind of like safe here. Alden puts in 275, so 15 kilos. So at this point, I'm just kind of like building that total, right? And everyone has put in numbers already. Let me just see what Volkov has put in. 93, 93, 93, 272, 275, 260, 280. Okay, so what's in 272? Right. So the number to still beat Chengyu here, Big Dog here is 287.5, right? Yeah, so projected rank, as you can see, 1, 2, 3. So kind of in a third place here, but puts me in line to kind of pull and wait. Into the second round. Second round, he pulls at 260, and I'm like, you guys are fucking with me, right? Fong pulls at 260, didn't look that hard. Definitely looks like he has a little bit more. So the data that I was getting from my handlers was that, this guy grinded out his last warm up, pulled this really slowly as a third attempt at his last comp or in training or wherever they saw it. So again, I don't believe that. I was at the back kind of watching here, and I was like, okay, this is he was pretty happy with that. And then he's in the lead right here. So all he needs to do is call that third deadlift exactly as he has it, and then wait for the rest of us to pull or push us to pull something that basically we don't have, right? So personally for me, I kind of didn't know because I was getting fed like information that I can clearly see is incorrect or rather not helpful for my situation. So I was just like, okay, let's just see his third. Anyway, we pull after him. We're gonna pull after him, so we can call based off of that, right? Volkov pulls, and at this point, I think he's only good to he's only good at this point for to get himself on the podium based of this attempt, and probably not kind of make a break for the second or the first or the first place here. Alldan goes up on 275, and this is where you can see that hip rise. And because I'm at the back over here, and I saw that hit kind of kick up, I was like, okay, if I put a lot of kilos on that bar, it's probably gonna kick, and he's probably gonna lose the leverage of his legs, and he will have to kind of hope that his back and hamstrings are actually strong enough to kind of fight through that position for him. He hits his second deadlift, no problem there. And at that point, yeah, I was like, okay, what do you think? I told Alden, you need to hit this and let me know what you think you 100% absolutely have. He comes back out. He says to me, 282 and a half. I was like, okay, 282 and a half. So I did the math, I ran the math, and I was like, okay, like that is the number that we will need to kind of that's the number I know you have. And immediately what I did was I put in a placeholder because I want to see and at this point Fong has already put in 270. Right? I want to see if he hits this 270, right? So if Fong hits that 270, to chip him, we will need 292.5, right? So in which case I will need more than that. So I will need for now I just put 290, and and if he hits this, I'll go up. If he doesn't, then I'll go and I'll drop it down to whatever number I need to beat him. Right, so based off of that, if we were to put 270 and he doesn't hit, so 270 doesn't hit, that number drops down to 282 and a half. So I've checked the math and I know that, okay, like if Fong misses, I need 282 and a half, right? So 290 here, right? And um I need 287 and a half if Big Dog loads 305, which I think based off of his so whoops, sorry. This is one. Based off of his 280, I was pretty convinced that
Three white lights,
I
good
was
lift.
pretty convinced here that he didn't have his 305, right? But I was still not ready to kind of like put it against him. So I at this point I kind of projected he probably has about 300 at the top end, which then I would then kind of do the math here. So 300 here would mean that I'll need 282. So you can see that the number here is both 282. So put 282 and Fong misses, right? Then that becomes then I essentially do enough to take him on first place, and I also do enough to push Big Dog to take 300, and then need to kind of essentially, you know, outpull me, right? So I need 282 to beat Big Dog, and Big Dog needs more than 300 to kind of outpull me. So I think I was pretty convinced at this point that I will drop it down to 282. So Fong comes out on his third deadlift, and it's at this point where I'm kind of like here at the tech table watching. He he misses it, and immediately, if this kind of
Fortunately, no lift.
he misses it, and
It's okay. He's still in the lead.
Yep, he is still in the lead. Um,
We have attempt change.
and that is me putting in that attempt change to go down to 282 and a half, which is the magic number to kind of which is the magic number here that we've already worked out to push Big Dog to pull 302 and a half, which I don't think he have, and then immediately to jump into first from Fong. So if I were the Malaysian here, I'd probably have put 267 and a half, right? Again, which would mean that I would then need to go and actually pull my 290 to chip him, right? So he misses that. I dropped to 282 and a half. Right, so let this sheet refresh, 282 and a half. Alldan comes out. And bear in mind that this is the number that he told me that he 100% has. And I think that was a pretty good call. Anything more than that would have been a big risk. Goes into first, 3 hour lights. No dispute can be had about the lift there. So we pulled this 720. And based off of that, our lift would need 302.5 for Big Dog to match me on first, right? You can see that when we're doing first. And at this point, we're not even looking at Volkov anymore. Because this he comes out and hits this and takes this 285 for third place, right? So he's trying to fight for third and he doesn't have it. So that once Cheng Yu is safe in third, right? So it doesn't matter anymore. He then tries to go to 302 and a half to make a run for overall gold. And as he should, right? So prior to this competition, because I mean, I'm coaching against the national team head coach. One of the conversations I had with Alif was that when it comes to a situation like this, what is the play here, right? What is the concern of the national team versus the concern of the individual coaches and lifters? So Alif was saying to me at this point, if I'm handling someone, obviously I want to help them win. I want to help them do well. But at the end of the day, we have to make sure that both of our 93s get on the podium, right? So once that podium spot was safe for Big Dog, I would say that Alif had to load the 302 and a half to go after that first place, right? And I think one of the good things here is that that was really nice to see is that I think throughout this prep and nationals, I think both Big Dog and Alldan, at least from my point of view, really kind of push each other. And that also meant that both of them kind of like worked really hard to kind of be here at this on this platform, and at the same time, it's good because they're both kind of like able to stay locked in and push each other forward. I would say that I don't know about their own personal rivalries and how they see each other, but I would say that the way that they're both going about their business is really good for both of their developments, right? So as things stand, that's how it kind of played out. So Alden hits all of his attempts except that squat. And everyone else hits, I believe, one attempt less. And that's how the cookie crumbles. Alden is your 2026 Asian junior champion in the 93 kilo class, right? So I guess the last point to leave you guys with is that one of the big principles that I have around having a smaller deadlift in this case, or being the slightly smaller puller, is the principle that if you have the bigger deadlift, you need to pull what you need, right? So if that number that you need is small, that's a good thing. But if you don't have that bigger deadlift, then you have to pull the number that you absolutely have, right? So the main difference here is smaller deadlift, pull what you absolutely have and you know you have for sure. And then with the bigger deadlift, you have to pull what you need, even if it's not everything that you have, right? So where this principle comes in handy for a lot of game day is that a lot of the times you can suddenly shift from being the smaller deadlifter to becoming the bigger deadlifter, and immediately that principle flips around. So having that kind of a mental flexibility to look at the scoreboard and say, oh, damn, I'm suddenly now the bigger deadlifter and I need to pull what I need, right? Rather than what I have, right? Because a lot of the times you get locked into, oh, I am the small deadlifter, I'm the small deadlifter, I'm the small deadlifter. And I'm gonna pull what I have, what I have, what I have. But then you don't look at the scoreboard and you don't kind of notice that shift of perspective, the shift of the field, and you kind of miss that and you load a number that is just way too much. Obviously you're not kind of thinking about the principle necessarily, but and if you just follow the math, it naturally kind of takes you there. But at the same time, I think it's also a very helpful principle that I abide by, in terms of trying to really go after those kind of third deadlift pulls and stuff, right? So and also the bigger point here is that yes, you might have the stronger lifter, and I genuinely believe that had things played out a little bit differently, I believe Fong would have had a better chance, because had he take Alden probably missed this, right? And I think Fong could probably have had 300. So let's run the numbers here. If he had 300 here, 162 is probably the top of his bench, and 265 here. 727. Even if I think the number then to beat would be 292.5, which would have been a little bit too hard for Alden. So I think all things considered, you really, really need to not chase some of the bigger numbers, some of the numbers that you don't have on the day, right? Just to kind of because you want to help the lifter hit a PR or whatever. But instead, just really, really look at what's in front of you. All right. So I hope that wasn't too long. One last thing is I want to shout out Tien from Australia. He used to be my coach at one point. But basically, this is his sheet, right? And one of the things that's really cool about it is that it gives you the number to chip and to match. So you don't really have to do your own calculations. I really should be using this sheet a lot more in competition. It's a mobile friendly one, so it's already kind of formatted to the phone. But I was still kind of using calculators and not really thinking too much about it. But yeah, so shout out to Tin and Ernest, right, for building up this sheet, and it's a super helpful tool for just looking at what you need to chip and what you need to match, and all of the even has a 0.5 and stuff like that. So yeah, thanks for tuning in, guys. And hope this was helpful for all of your future kind of game day plays. And let us know if you have any questions or comments, or like this style of content. And if you want to work with any of battalion coaches, do kind of just check out our website, and then you can apply from there, or just kind of DM us on Instagram, and we can kind of hook you up and get you started. So otherwise, thanks for tuning in. Peace.